regarding pregnancy, childbirth, and children in Seraphim and in the inner earth, or rather central hollow in general. I've touched upon this in the women of Seraphim. In this series on the Sky Dancers, I've also addressed how the Dakini had children and why. But in this video, I wanted to take a closer look, most importantly, how they assist the females in the inner earth, and especially in Seraphim, with this process, and the whole psychology around it, and the sacred preparation, and all of that. I'm just touching into it, but I wanted to give an idea of how this works, because I felt it was a very important part of their participation in the sacred hollow. Those Dakini, most especially in this position of helping the women of Seraphim and the greater sacred hollow with childbirth, are the daughters of the 12 and the Kareem. And most especially the Kareem, it seems, have a role in this. Not that all Kareem are doing this. Again, we're looking at a larger picture where different women involved in the Dakini process, whether they are Kareem or actual bloodline Dakini, choose that path, choose to work in that capacity. And many do. It is not so much about the actual giving birth. Certainly that is the final result of the birthing process, but it is about preparation on a spiritual, mental, physical, of course, and psychological level, all of those levels. And most prominently, it is the spiritual imprint, understanding that the soul that is going to come into the field, into the body, is being called in specifically. Now, I need to address something here before we go any further. And that is how a soul enters a body. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of this because that's not expressly the topic of this particular video, but it's so germane to it. So I will say that on the surface of the planet, because this is a different electromagnetic zone, the surface is a different electromagnetic zone than the sacred hollow of the planet. And on the surface, what happens is souls are basically waiting for an opportunity to enter a body. They are being guided to some extent, though. It's not like a big free-for-all. It has been spoken about by some as, which sperm actually gets to the egg. The sperms are all fighting to get in there. Well, that's the sperms. That's not the souls themselves. But it's somehow been translated to say, the souls are all just, hopefully just have a second to beat the other one out to get into the body. And it doesn't work that way. At least it's not supposed to. In most cases, even on the surface earth, souls are being guided to say, well, this is a good match here. How about this? And in many cases, the path is held open for that soul to enter that body. In a lot of cases, it is not. And the soul does have competition for that particular spot. But it is not like thousands of souls trying to get into one body. So it still has some kind of order to it. Now, when we're dealing with human beings who are deeply involved in drugs or just simply very lost in their own miasm, the souls that come into those bodies are often in a more chaotic struggle just to enter a body. However, there are exceptions to that, where higher souls choose to move into those bodies to help paragenetically lift the genetic field. So there are many different instances, different situations involved. Now, if we go into the inner earth, rather the sacred hollow of the inner earth, because there are all kinds of scenarios as we look at the cavern areas and all of that, good, bad, indifferent, so we don't even touch that in this. We're going to the sacred hollow. In that electromagnetic zone, in that womb zone, the womb of the planet, souls are specifically matched to the parents, very specifically. There's no, well, maybe this soul can get in or that, or we're going to try to plan to get this one in, but that one might come in. There are all these kinds of scenarios on the surface of the earth. That's not the case in the inner earth. It's very measured. Now, that sounds almost too automatic, like science fiction or something, but it's not. It's based on spirituality. It's based on the heart frequency. So when you look at it from that perspective, you understand that it's not some kind of automated thing. Oh, we're going to match you up over here like the dating game or something. No, it is based on true heart frequency. And that heart frequency is understood, known, and can even be charted. It can be charted electromagnetically when the woman becomes pregnant, especially in the first trimester. Of course, in the inner earth, the first trimester is a very short period of time, given that most women have the whole pregnancy only takes 4 months. But so there's a process of determining the soul connection through heart resonance in the first place, and how to develop that heart resonance. It's not like, oh, you get pregnant in the inner earth and just naturally this takes place. There is a more natural proclivity for it. But all women who are pregnant in the inner earth go through the process of making that dedication, that heart frequency connection. And this is quantum science, as is everything. Now, bear in mind that very few pregnancies occur in the inner earth compared to the outer earth. It's a more planned thing, not through contraceptions or anything like that. It's a spiritual connection to the souls that are waiting to enter these particular incarnations in the inner earth, which is very specific. Now you might say, well, how do they keep other souls from entering that? Well, it's the electromagnetic field that determines the quality of consciousness that's allowed to incarnate. And there can be a varied state of on the surface of the earth. The electromagnetic field is so erratic by comparison to the inner earth that the degree of types of souls, of levels of, I say types, I mean of levels of awareness and evolution is varied. It's very varied. It's a lot of different types can come into, I say types again, a lot of different frequency can come into that state. In the sacred hollow, that's not the case. The electromagnetic zone is more coherent in the frequencies it determines. And so the souls that are entering into incarnation in the sacred hollow are very specific to that state of awareness, because the state of awareness all the beings in the inner earth is more coherent. So coherency is the keynote here. So now let us return to the process. There's first the calling in of the soul, the connection that's made to the soul. Now this is pre-pregnancy. This is preconception. When a woman and man decide that it is the right time to bring a soul into the world, to incarnate, to allow an incarnation to come through them, And how this decision is made is through dreams, visions, certain experiences that happen. Again, I'm shortcutting the picture. I could write a whole book on just this. So I'm just giving you the basic scenarios. So this has been decided through a process. And the couple may be together and have been together a long time, or they may not be. They may come together because of the dreams and visions that bring them together for this particular purpose, and this purpose only, not to create a whole family, but this one pregnancy and birth. So, regardless of how this takes place, in that way, they have come together to decide to bring a soul into this world, into the inner earth world. So when they do this, they go through a process of connecting to that soul before conception. This is something that is guided by the Dakini, those who specifically work with the inner earth people, most especially in the Seraphim, to accomplish this. Now, in other regions and other cultures of the inner earth, it varies in some ways, but a similar process takes place. And the Dakini influence is there. It may not be an actual daughter of the Dakini, but at least a Kareem is going to be on board with this. Even if that were not the case, it would still follow these procedures, but the Kareem offer themselves in this capacity. So, once it has been established that a particular soul is coming through that couple, then there is the conception. And at the time of conception, there is a process of bringing that sacred moment into a flashpoint so that the soul entering the conception has a greater spectrum of experience with the divine sequencing of consciousness between them, that soul that's entering, and the couple receiving. I know that's kind of cryptic. It's difficult for me to put into words what I'm receiving on this. There's a whole science behind it. So that's the best I can do at the moment. In the first few weeks of pregnancy, the man and the woman spend a great deal of time together, focusing their energies on the incoming soul, talking to it, bringing it into a level of deep communion with them. Actually, this continues to some degree during the first 2 months. Now remember, the whole pregnancy is only 4 months. The last 2 months of the 4-month pregnancy, the woman goes into a sort of a retreat of energies. She doesn't sequester herself away entirely, but she is brought into certain places that the Dakini have provided, not on the Dakini Island, but in the Greater Seraphim or in other land areas. In those land areas, they are birthing houses, not only to give birth, but to bring the person, the woman, into a process with the child that's deeper and deeper as she grows that baby in her womb. There are chantings, songs, mantras, all kinds of things are going on. At times, the man is brought into that scenario, and he goes into a process with them in those particular places. But for the most part, in those last 2 months, it is the woman who is focusing on the child growing in her stomach. These procedures will vary in accordance with the culture frame in which they are performed. I don't speak a lot about all the different cultures in the inner earth. I did when I wrote the source issues in the early stages in 1980 to 1983. I spoke about a lot of the different cultures in the inner earth. I wasn't even aware of Seraphim at the time. But I'm not doing that now because the focus seems to be on Seraphim because of its unique nature of helping to take us into the newer star. So that's where my focus is at this time. But obviously there are other cultures, other civilizations in the inner earth, and yet they're all very connected. They're all very synergized. They're individual. They have individual customs in many ways. They've kept from the surface earth and developed, but they have this deep connection between all of them. Yet there are culture and custom differences. And so a Kareem assisting a woman and man in the birthing process, in pregnancy and birthing process, in an Egyptian culture in the inner earth, or a Native American culture in the inner earth would be far different in outer appearance than what they're doing in Seraphim. The gist of it, the core of it is the same, but the outer would conform to that particular culture that they were working with. Now, the Kareem, many of them are shamans, and actually, if you look at the whole of the Dakini, they're shamans too. So the shamanic power is very prevalent in the inner earth cultures, all of them, not just Native American, but Egyptian and even Celtic and all of this. Shaman is a word I'm using here, but I'm talking about the actual ability to merge with nature and call upon nature and all of this. This is something we're going to go into a little more in chapter 6. So now let us return to Seraphim, both the city and the greater Seraphim, of which the Dakini island is a part of on the outer periphery. In that particular region, there are many cavern areas directly connected to the volcanic experience there that created the island in the first place. Now, honestly, there's many more cavern areas where people can go into caverns in the whole of the inner earth than there is on the surface. Now, we have caves all over the place here, but in the inner earth, they're always more accessible. Yet in Seraphim, it's one of the areas that is especially easy to go into a cave, and some really incredible caves there. So the Dakini who help those to go through the process of conception, pregnancy, and birthing in Seraphim will have a time when they bring the pregnant female, and this is usually very close to the time of her actual giving birth, into a cavern area. And the area that they have designated for this is very specific. It's called Magwala, and it is it means the birthing, the chamber of birth, the experience of coming close to the mother and opening the flower of life. So that would be Magwala, would be Maguala. Magwala. The pregnant woman and the attendant Dakini would remain in this cave from about, I would say, for a whole week before the actual birth. So they would be there all that time. Neither would take any food or water. Now you would think, oh my gosh, what they're doing to this baby in the womb by depriving it of food and water. But what's going on in the cave is pure energy nourishment. to both the Dakini woman that is there to service this process, and the pregnant woman, and of course the child in the womb. So the energy experience is so powerful. The body is given hydration and nourishment during this entire time of a very high frequency. This cave process in the Magwala does not take place in all the cultures of the inner earth, the sacred hollow. It does in Seraphim, and to a lesser degree, it does almost like symbolically in certain of the other cultures. The reason being is that Seraphim, that point in Seraphim, has the energy to sustain the process. There will be some women who come to Seraphim to experience it because they cannot where they are in other locations. Again, I must stress that there are so few pregnancies, and the population is so small compared to the surface of the earth, and everything is connected to the spiritual consciousness, the directive that's given through spiritual consciousness. So that's why all of this is able to take place. The birthing of the child. Once the woman is ready to give birth, and again, this isn't, oh, I think she may give birth any minute. It's like they know. They have already done the astrology chart for the child's birth by that time. They know exactly when it's going to be birthed. The woman will come into, the pregnant woman will come into another place, not in a cave, where the father of the child will be also, and the birthing will take place. The birthing itself is very easy for the woman. A certain process involved. Of course, it's a physical thing. She has to go through a process of giving birth, but there's no pain involved. And it's very illuminating. It's very radiant. They're experiencing all these light energies, and all this kind of thing is going on rather than pain. And the father of the child is there with her, and he is experiencing to some extent what she is experiencing, not in its entirety, but I mean he's connecting into that field and helping her move through that process. So then the child is born, and it's not like, well, that's the end of it. No, not at all. The Dakini help the parents move through a process with that infant for the first 6 months of its life. And indeed, the mother can always return to her main Dakini facilitator anytime during the growth of that child. In conclusion, imagine a world in which every child is wanted. Every child is loved to the depth that's possible to love, and accepted on that level. While the human beings in the interior of the earth, the sacred hollow, are not perfect by any means, they're human beings, they are able to have a greater degree of evolution because of the circumstances of their habitat. Now, also, of course, if they've incarnated into the inner earth and not some of the more ancient ones that came in originally, their souls were, in a sense, chosen for that experience. But see, this is where it gets complicated, because some of the souls that are in the inner earth are also having alternate lifetimes on the surface of the earth, and they are far from perfect people. I can promise you that. So how does that really work? I don't have the real answer to that. But from my own viewpoint, I feel that we do not understand perfection. We do not understand evolution and the many intricacies of that. When I say evolution, I'm talking about spiritual evolution. We probably don't understand physical evolution either, but that was what I was referring to, the spiritual aspect. So I'm just going to let that, go here and not try to dissect it, but to say that if we had the opportunity to live in the inner earth, in the sacred hollow of the inner earth, we would find our lives changing dramatically for the better, and our ability to connect to our spirit and to understand things and to be a part of the whole, it would all be so much easier. Not perfect, but so much easier. However, let's not lament that. Some of us may be there and experiencing it on some other level of our soul being. And those that are not, you're experiencing other dimensions. Everyone is experiencing other dimensions. Some a lot better than this. Probably most of them. I don't mean to say that in a negative way, but this is not the highest level of coherence that our souls are experiencing. So now let us take a collective breath, all of us, and feel in to the spirit that designed this planet and the original purpose of our souls coming to this point in space and time. Know that we are all connected, ourselves and the kindred within the earth. And to this purpose will we come together again for the light ascension into the new earth star.